How much government is too much? In the UK, you can be arrested for barking at a dog. In the UK, you can be arrested for calling a policeman's horse gay. In the UK, you can be arrested for displaying toy seals coloured with red food dye as part of an animal rights protest. In the UK, you can be arrested for preaching a religion. In the UK, you can be arrested because you're holding up an A4 sign in your own window saying that religions are fairy stories for adults. You can be arrested just for saying that homosexuality is a sin or displaying a sign that says homosexual conduct is immoral. You can be arrested for displaying a sign with the words, "Scientology is not a religion, it's a dangerous cult." You can be arrested just for having a conversation with a Muslim about Muhammad and Islamic dress for women. You can be arrested if you are campaigning against a fundamentalist Muslim group that calls for the killing of gay people, Jews, apostates and unchaste women, if the slogans that you're displaying on your banners and placards are maybe considered a bit too offensive. All of these cases I'm talking about are real, all of them have happened, and all of them are absolutely ridiculous. All of these offences, if you even have the audacity to call them that, are categorised under Section 5 of the Public Order Act, which essentially states that you're guilty of an offence if you say something which can be considered insulting. This, as you may be aware, is fundamentally wrong on so many different levels. It has a devastating effect on free speech because you have the state, the police and the courts all deciding whether or not something is or isn't offensive, or whether or not your feelings may have been hurt. And I think it's very dangerous that any of them should have a say in that at all. Now, my first problem with this is whether or not something can be considered insulting is totally subjective. So here's a hypothetical situation which I've written down, okay? Person A and person B both hold view X. View X is subject to controversy, there's a large variety of attitudes towards it, some people find it insulting, some people don't. Persons A and B both go to express view X in two different places. Where person A is, the audience are very thick-skinned and they aren't offended by it. Person A expresses view X with no problem and doesn't get arrested. Where person B is, the audience are very sensitive and they are offended by it. Person B is arrested for expressing view X. What results is a situation in which view X is legal or illegal depending on who you say it to, which I think is an incredibly dangerous situation. So when you have view X being illegal or legal depending on who you say it to, person A and person B both have exactly the same intentions in mind with what they're doing, but they're not being treated fairly, they're not being treated equal to one another. And you can make the counter-argument to what I'm saying by basically saying, well, there is an objective standard as to whether or not something is or isn't offensive, and that's simply determined by finding out what the majority of people find offensive. Which, again, I have a rebuttal to in the form of another hypothetical situation. Suppose that in 2000 the majority of the populace hold view X. They feel that view Y is offensive, so they decide to outlaw expression of view Y. Later on in 2020, due to changes in the social, economic, cultural and political climate or any other reason, the majority of the populace have changed their minds and hold view Y instead, believing X to be offensive. But they continue to express view X and suppress view Y because of the previous laws made. They cannot call for free expression of view Y because it's illegal, and also because of social pressures to conform. As a result, they become trapped and the majority opinion is stifled. This is not democracy. As an alternative to this, you could simply allow for the free expression of both ideas X and Y. This way the public are in no way pressured to hold either of them, they can change their minds depending on the political climate, and generally you have a free exchange of ideas. This should be essential in a democratic society. Another point I want to make against Section 5 is fairly simple and self-explanatory really. You should not be able to dial 999 just because your feelings have been hurt. It's not a fucking emergency. The state does not exist just to cater to your emotional well-being. The right for people to express insulting opinions is so much more important than this imaginary right that you have in your head not to have your feelings hurt. And yes, I'm offended by lots of things, but does that mean that I shouldn't let other people express their opinions just because they offend me? We've gotten to a point now where you can essentially silence someone else just for disagreeing with you because you deem their criticism of your viewpoint to be offensive and insulting and humiliating and degrading. How much of a fucking pansy do you have to be to not be able to handle legitimate criticism of your position? If you can't handle criticism, which is part of a price to pay for being in a society which to some extent has free speech, then fuck off. Being insulted is a part of life. And I'm sorry if this seems callous, but first of all, I don't care if your feelings have been hurt, and secondly, the police don't either. If you think that you can actually call the fucking police just because your feelings have been hurt, you're living in a fucking fantasy world. If we were to take insults out of Section 5, we would stop criminalising just everyday disputes and exchanges that happen all of the time. It's just a part of life. And we would free up the police and give them a chance to deal with real issues rather than people's fucking feelings. We do have laws out there to protect people from discrimination, abuse, and threatening. That should be perfectly fine. That should be enough. We should not criminalise mere insults, though. That's just ridiculous. Now, thankfully, the unelected House of Lords will be voting on this next Wednesday, and I really hope that they take insults out of Section 5, because it will be a small step towards a freer society, which I really hope I will get to see within my lifetime.